Hey, Chris Cantelmo here with another vibration. And we're in Southern California here in Los Angeles. We're about to get our first rain of the fall, winter. And we can't wait. Most of us can't wait. Because the rains, they bring renewal like everywhere, of course. Some places in the world now getting so much rain, it's a problem. Here in Southern California, I mean, you can just look around. There's an awful lot of brown on the hillsides, and things are quite dry and crispy, prone to burning. Gosh, when the rains come, it's like just life renews. And nature can breathe again and swallow again, and it's just such a beautiful thing. And the rains knock the dust off of everything. In the morning after, there's just such a glistening of hope and renewal, and it's fantastic. And I can't wait. But on the other hand, as I was walking down here to my trails, going under the overpass, I ran into one of my homeless neighbor friends. And of course, this poor homeless, these guys, they're twin brothers, and they're, I don't know, maybe 45 years old. I mean, identical twins. And they've been homeless for about a year and a half. Like they have just an incredible family story. These guys are like the 7th and 8th kids in a family, where it got to the point where their parents just sort of reverted to calling them the twins, because even their parents couldn't really make out who was who at any given time if the lighting conditions weren't right. And so these guys sort of like struggled from early on, like not being recognized as individuals by even their own parents. And by some sequence of events, they ended up homeless. And so they live under a pepper tree over here. And they got a great, I mean, for homeless people living under a pepper tree, they got a nice little like encampment. They've got this beautiful little Boston Terrier dog. That is such a friendly little guy, just a friendly little loving dog. And they take care of their dog, and they're down there in their tent. And when the rains come for these guys, it's a whole different thing. It's like you know, all of us sort of check on the weather. We want to know, okay, hey, what's going to happen? Just out of curiosity. These guys, it's a question of life and death. Like if all their shit gets wet, life changes in a hurry. And so he knows exactly where the storm is, when it's going to hit, the likelihood of their stuff getting wet. And it just, I mean, we get so caught up in our everyday troubles, where we don't have exactly what we're looking for, or things didn't work out at work, something didn't work out just the way you hoped. And when you interact with people who have nothing, and their real concern is whether or not all of their stuff is going to be destroyed in the coming rains, as opposed to just whether or not your outdoor outing might be postponed because of a rainstorm or something. It gives you a whole new perspective. And it just makes, I don't know, it makes me yearn for, I guess, what I would call in some ways simpler times, where people cared about. Maybe there was no other time when people actually cared about their neighbors. But there was a time in the United States anyway where homelessness was very rare. And that was before 1980. before 1984, there was almost no real homelessness. And then during the Reagan administration, it was decided that the safety net that we had in this country was too safe, I guess. I guess we were spoiling poor people by never letting them become homeless. And so during one of the largest economic expansions in the history of the United States, which means when more people became rich than at any other time in the history of the United States, as of 1984, we created the poorest, most destitute class in our country. And I would say that that has been, and that was done by the Ronald Reagan administration and the Republican Party, the party which holds itself out as the party of God, really, and of belief in a higher power. And I would say that somebody dropped the ball. At that point in American history, in the mid-'80s, as a society, we decided that it was okay for super poor people to suffer horribly in our midst, as long as super wealthy people were able to get wealthier, easier, with lower taxes, the whole trickle-down thing. And once that took hold in our society, it seems like we lost our way. Sometimes you got to stop and you got to look around. And you got to say, hey, you got to look what's happening here. It's quite exactly clear. We're not taking care of each other. We're not caring for each other. We're all on this planet together. And yet somehow we've allowed ourselves the right to avert our eyes to the most needy and the most destitute. We've allowed ourselves to buy into the notion that the poorest people are poor and in trouble because they deserve it, because they didn't work hard enough, or they made mistakes. And that's just utter nonsense. Sure, there are a number of people in any given group. Some people, for whatever reason, are going to make the wrong decisions and end up in trouble by their own mistakes, even when they were warned, hey, don't do that, and they do it anyway, and it goes badly. And some small percentage of people sort of get what they deserve. But have we reached the point as a society, and I'm talking about specifically America here, but I suspect it's true around the world, because America has put its tentacles out and sort of dictated to the rest of the world, hey, if you're not like America, you're fucked. Have we reached a point as a society where we've lost, where we don't believe in redemption, where we don't believe that if people have made a mistake that they are worthy of redemption, and maybe they need a little help? Once you're homeless, it's hard to become unhomeless. Simple things like filling out an application for a job, or having a phone number where someone can call you for a job when you don't have a phone, or if you can't charge your phone, it becomes incredibly difficult. And I see these guys here struggling. And I always let them know, hey, you know what, you need some, your stuff gets wet, you can come over to my house and you dry your stuff in my dryer. You guys get scared, like if something happens, just come over, just get out of the elements. Most of them are kind of too proud or too afraid, I don't know. All I know is that something's not right in our world, where right over here you got people building new houses, big, huge 5,000 square foot houses. And then here in the riverbed, there are people who can't have food for more than a day's worth of food because it'll get eaten by ants and bugs. When the rains come, all their stuff gets destroyed. And it's quite disturbing to me. And I would say that you can judge a society by not how well it treats its richest members, but how well it treats its poorest members. What do we do as a society to take care of those people who need help? And what we do here in America is government keeps trying to cut taxes for the wealthy, make things easier for wealthy people, we're told, and things will get better for everyone. Well, I don't see the evidence for that. In fact, the evidence is in the opposite direction. Every time we try to make things easier for the wealthy, we seem to get more and more poor people and more homeless people. And there's something very unright about that. And I remember when I first started experimenting with DMT, when people would still, my quote-unquote friends would still take my calls. One of my friends from college, this guy Henry, I'd call Henry and I'd say, Henry, you're not going to believe what's going on. Like, this DMT thing is just unbelievable. And sometimes I would call and say, hey, I think we're in a simulation. Like this last experience I had was so much like a video game. I think we might be in a simulation. And then I started to some of these visions I had. I said, hey, you know what? This is all about schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is the natural endogenous overproduction of DMT in the adult when we're adults, and that's what schizophrenia is. I remember explaining this to Henry and talking about how I was interacting with the local homeless people here and schizophrenics. And Henry said, well, you keep it up with the DMT and you're going to be down there with the schizophrenics and the homeless, and that's all the people you're going to have in your life. And I thought, my goodness, what has become of our society? When this Yale-educated guy, his father was president of a university, and Henry, and I'm sure his whole family worked hard. I'm sure they earned every penny that they had. But here was this well-educated, successful person talking down about schizophrenics and homeless people, and telling me that if I pursued the most incredible, the most fascinating area of inquiry that I'd ever pursued in my life, that I was going to end up like a schizophrenic and like a homeless person, and I should just stop it. And I might, given that everyone thinks I'm crazy, and no one ever wants to call me from my family or my old friends. They're gone. They all think I'm nuts and like I'm just like a troublemaker. When all I try to do from the start is say, hey, there's something really special here. There's something really special. And then I wonder how many people through history the shamans through the years, and everyone who's had these transcendent experiences, and particularly with DMT, how many people tried to get people's attention, say, hey, look here. And they got passed by, and it's how it's led to this, our society where we're so consumed with just having more than our neighbor. And because we're consumed with having more than our neighbor, there's a certain level of dishonesty that crops up, where people have to, and you see it in social media, where people have to put their best face forward. One of the things that I was shocked about social media when I first started checking out Facebook, I would look at what my friends were posting on Facebook, like people who I knew quite well, and then I saw, what? That's not what they're like. They're putting up this facade of this great life. And sure, they had a great life, but not the life that they were projecting. Like, I knew them quite well. So I was like, wow, this whole social media thing is like an exercise in sort of dishonesty and putting forth in a flavor and a version of existence which is just very much exaggerated and untrue. And then it propagates. So everyone looks at what their friends are doing and seeing this the best version of their life, and then everyone feels somewhat muted and like they're somehow not living up. But it's all a complete facade. It's all a complete circle jerk. What have we gotten ourselves into when we compete with our neighbors for wanting to have more and a nicer car and a bigger house, and yet we have our brothers and sisters, or some people are living on the streets. When I lived in New York in the late 80s, I'd see people down in the subway. And you've seen it if you've been in New York or big cities where it gets cold during the winter, like real cold. These homeless people get this situation where they just get this uncontrollable flow of mucus. And it must be the most horrible situation in the world, where they're just freezing and shivering and just this disaster of fluids that comes out of their face. And people are like, you look and you're like, what do you do? And you just want someone to do something about it. And you could, like, something needs to be done, but the notion was there's a problem with them, and they fucked up for themselves. And I remember being so disturbed about it. And there's a certain element of society that says, hey, don't help, don't give handouts to homeless people. Like, it only makes them lazier. Like, if they're begging and you give them stuff, they're just going to get lazier. It only hurts them. Well, bullshit. People need help. Like, we need to help each other. And it's appalling what I see when I look at our national media, the New York Times. I've got a subscription to the New York Times. And the front page is just a disaster of showing the ups and downs of the stock market, which most people don't even participate in. And this ridiculous situation we've got going on in Washington, this impeachment. The little nitty-gritty details of the impeachment hearings. and what so-and-so said about somebody else and this and that and the other thing. And meanwhile, we got people living in the streets of our country. But that's not on the front page. And I wonder, what kind of a society have we become? Where are we going? There's got to be a better way where looking out for each other, helping people who have nothing would seem to be more important than what so-and-so said about Donald Trump's phone call to the Ukrainians. Not that that's not important, but we need to take care of the weakest people in our society when they call out for help. And of people who are living on the streets and they have nothing, if they're not calling out for help, and most of them, they don't want, they're embarrassed about the fact of where they're at. And I see them here, I see people in their campers, and clearly they have nothing. And they'll be on the road and they've run out of gas and they block the road and it's a big problem and everyone's upset and embarrassed, and it's like, why don't we just give this guy a little gasoline? Is it so hard? Would it be so hard to figure out a way in the wealthiest country in the world to take care of the poorest people? Is that really a hard thing to do? I think we all need to take a minute and say, what the hell are we doing? Where are our priorities? How is it that we can spend money on thinking about putting people into space when people don't have space here on Earth to live in? And I'm a scientist. I like finding out about the universe. But Jesus, let's take care of the people in our midst before we go searching for extraterrestrials. And the extraterrestrials are coming here first. They're already here. Anyway. I used to think about this stuff, of course, before DMT, but after DMT. And now that I'm reconnected with the spirit world, and I wonder, I now know, like, there is a God, and there are spirits. And now I look back at my life and I say, how many times did I, instead of, when someone was down, instead of trying to lift them up, how many times did I just sort of like walk over them? And I wonder if am I going to pay a price in the afterlife for not availing myself of every opportunity to help someone who is down? And I would suggest to you guys, plenty of you guys haven't done DMT, and some of you just dismiss everything that we say and like, oh, we don't know what we're talking about. Well, guess what? Every single person who does DMT comes back and says, hey, you know what? If they don't have a spiritual interaction their first time, eventually they do. But everyone, from the first time someone does DMT, they say, whoa, okay, that was really different and interesting. And almost everyone has to go back and look at it more, and then the more you look at it, the more you come to the conclusion, like, okay, the world that what I thought about the world isn't true. It's much more. There's a much more complicated, bigger picture out there. So there's some type of you interact with spirits, and then you have to come to the question: to what extent have I fulfilled my obligations as a human being to others? And man, if there's one thing that I lose sleep about now, I worry about every time that I killed a bug and didn't give a damn, or sort of laughed off, I didn't pay attention to someone who was really in need of attention and love, and I just let it slip by because that's their problem. And what DMT shows you, if nothing else, it's that there's a bigger world out there. There's a spirit world. And there, it seems like there is most definitely an afterlife. And I think when people see that there is an afterlife, they're gonna be. There's no question. There's no alternative when you're confronted with the fact that there's an afterlife. You have to say, how does my behavior in this life affect going forward in the afterlife? And when more and more people reach this point, the world is going to get better because we're going to be nicer to each other. And that's what is required of all of us, to be nicer to people and to lend a hand to people who don't have all the advantages that we have. So anyway, as the rains, the first rains of the winter, fall and winter in Southern California come, it's led me to thinking about people who don't have shelter from the rain. And let's help people who don't have shelter from the rain. Chris Cantelmo here with another vibration.